Isn't this heat absolutely horrendous? It's 34 degrees in London at the moment, and we are just not equipped for this kind of heat. Anyway, so today's question is, what is the ink blot test in psychology? So the ink blot test is officially known as the Rorschach test, and it's a psychological test in which the subject's perceptions of ink blots are analyzed. And it was designed by a Swiss psychiatrist called Hermann Rorschach in the 1920s, and he designed it for the purpose of identifying mental illness in patients. Now, in the test, clients are simply asked to respond to 10 ink blots, each of which are printed on a separate white card. Here's what they look like. Now, the respondent's brain then has to work hard to impose meaning upon each ink blot image. The examiner of the test then writes down all of the subject's responses, which then provide the data needed for understanding the client's cognitive operations. Now, as you can imagine, the test is highly controversial. Of course, proponents of the test argue that troubled personalities who are able to keep it together with other psychological tests often break down and expose their darker side when they're confronted with the 10 ink blots. But there are also many, many psychologists who reject the test as complete and utter pseudoscience, and this is because some studies have shown that nearly half of the people who take the test will be labeled as exhibiting some level of distorted thinking. And of course, the idea that half the population have mental illness or are mentally deranged is absolutely ridiculously ludicrous, isn't it? Now, nonetheless, there are respected scientists who maintain their support, avid support, for the test and won't hear anything negative said about it. So is it pseudoscience? Well, it's certainly an unusual measurement tool, and to be honest with you, it's probably not one that I would personally use myself if I was in clinical practice. But, as you know, I'm not in clinical practice, so my opinion on whether I would use it or not isn't really relevant. But that's not to say that all of the results of the Rorschach test are completely worthless, but ultimately, I believe that it tells us really nothing about the psychological state of a person that a good professional therapist probably wouldn't have already learnt from a conversation. So, do psychologists still use it? Yes, they do, absolutely. Should you take online Rorschach tests to determine to determine your personality or whatever the hell they're asking you to determine? No, the Rorschach test is not a personality test, and it most certainly cannot be determined by an online algorithm. Or I've seen TikTok videos explaining what each of the ink blots mean, which is also ludicrous, stupid, and rubbish. So don't self-diagnose based on doing a Rorschach test online or based on what you hear a TikTok influencer tell you that each ink blot means, because invariably they're wrong. All right, there you go. That's it. The ink blot test, the Rorschach test.